Sunset, also known as sundown, is when the sun disappears below the horizon each day. This happens because of Earth's rotation. If you are at the equator, the sun sets exactly to the west during spring and autumn. If you are in the middle parts of the world, the summer sun sets towards the northwest in the Northern Hemisphere. In the Southern Hemisphere, it sets towards the southwest. In astronomy, sunset is the exact moment the top edge of the sun dips below the horizon. When the sun is near the horizon, Earth's atmosphere bends the sunlight. This makes the sun appear higher than it actually is. So, when you see the sun setting, it is already a little bit below the horizon. Sunset is different from twilight. Twilight has three parts. The first part is civil twilight. This begins when the sun goes below the horizon and lasts until it is 6 degrees below. The second part is nautical twilight, which is when the sun is between 6 and 12 degrees below the horizon. The third part is astronomical twilight, when the sun is between 12 and 18 degrees below the horizon. Dusk is the very end of astronomical twilight. It is the darkest part of twilight, just before night begins. Night starts when the sun is 18 degrees below the horizon and no longer lights up the sky. Places very far north, like the Arctic Circle, or very far south, like the Antarctic Circle, do not have a full sunset every day of the year. This happens during the polar day or the polar night, when it is light or dark for 24 hours straight. Why do sunset times change? The time of sunset changes throughout the year. It depends on where you are on Earth, including your longitude, latitude, and how high up you are. These daily changes happen because of Earth's tilt, its daily spin, and its yearly path around the sun. The moon's movement around Earth also plays a small part. During winter and spring, the days get longer. Sunsets happen later each day. This continues until the day with the latest sunset, which is usually after the summer solstice. In the Northern Hemisphere, the latest sunset happens in late June or early July. This is not exactly on the summer solstice, June 21st. The exact date depends on your location. It is also affected by Earth moving slower around the sun in early July. This point is called aphelion. Similarly, the earliest sunset does not happen on the winter solstice. It occurs about 2 weeks earlier. In the Northern Hemisphere, this is in early December or late November. This is because Earth moves faster around the sun in early January. This point is called perihelion. The same things happen in the Southern Hemisphere, but the dates are switched. The earliest sunsets are before June 21st in winter. The latest sunsets are after December 21st in summer. For a few weeks around the summer and winter solstices, both sunrise and sunset happen a little later each day. Even at the equator, sunrise and sunset times shift a few minutes throughout the year. These changes can be shown on a special diagram called an annual EMA. When the sun sets, it usually appears in the northwest from March to September. From September to March, it appears in the southwest. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, the sun sets almost exactly to the west for everyone on Earth. Daytime is slightly longer than nighttime. This is because sunrise and sunset are measured from the edges of the sun, not its center. Also, Earth's atmosphere bends sunlight. This means you can still see the sun even after it has gone below the horizon. This bending of light also makes the sun look a bit squashed when it is very close to the horizon. The bottom part of the sun's light bends more than the top. This makes the bottom edge appear higher, so the sun looks wider than it is tall. The sun also seems bigger when it is on the horizon, but this is just an optical illusion. Places north of the Arctic Circle and south of the Antarctic Circle do not have a sunset or sunrise every day. This happens during the polar day or the polar night, when it is light or dark for 24 hours. Why are sunsets colorful? When white sunlight travels through the air to your eyes, some colors are scattered away by tiny air molecules and particles. This changes the color of the light you see. Blue and green light have shorter wavelengths. They scatter more easily than other colors. So, these colors are mostly removed from the sunlight. At sunrise and sunset, sunlight travels through more of the atmosphere. This means almost all the blue and green light is scattered away. This leaves the longer wavelength colors, like orange and red, for us to see. These red and orange colors can then be scattered by clouds and other particles. This makes the horizon look red and orange. This scattering of shorter wavelengths is called Rayleigh scattering. It happens because of air molecules and particles much smaller than the light's wavelength. Scattering by larger particles, like cloud droplets, is called Mie scattering. This type of scattering does not depend much on the light's wavelength. Mie scattering is why clouds look white. It also causes the white glow around the sun during the day. Sunset colors are usually brighter than sunrise colors. This is because the air in the evening often has more tiny particles than the morning air. Sometimes, just before sunrise or after sunset, you might even see a green flash. Ash from volcanic eruptions can change sunset colors. If the ash is low in the atmosphere, it can make sunsets look dull. But if volcanic ash goes high into the stratosphere, it can create beautiful colors after sunset. These are called afterglows. Famous eruptions like Mount Pinatubo in 1991 and Krakatoa in 1883 caused amazing afterglows around the world. The high-altitude clouds reflect the reddened sunlight back down to Earth after the sun has set. You can also see many different colors in the sky opposite the sun, the eastern sky, during twilight. These colors can be very varied and unusual, depending on the weather and the types of clouds. Sunset, or sundown, is the disappearance of the sun at the end of the sun path, below the horizon of the Earth, or any other astronomical object in the solar system, due to its rotation. As viewed from everywhere on Earth, it is a phenomenon that happens approximately once every 24 hours, except in areas close to the poles. The equinox sun sets due west at the moment of both the spring and autumn equinoxes. As viewed from the Northern Hemisphere, the sun sets to the northwest, or not at all, in the spring and summer, and to the southwest in the autumn and winter. These seasons are reversed for the Southern Hemisphere. The sunset is defined in astronomy the moment the upper limb of the sun disappears below the horizon. Near the horizon, atmospheric refraction causes sunlight rays to be distorted to such an extent that geometrically the solar disk is already about 1 diameter below the horizon when a sunset is observed. Sunset is distinct from twilight, which is divided into 3 stages. The first one is civil twilight, which begins once the sun has disappeared below the horizon, and continues until it descends to 6 degrees below the horizon. The early to intermediate stages of twilight coincide with pre-dusk. The second phase is nautical twilight, between 6 and 12 degrees below the horizon. The third phase is astronomical twilight, which is the period when the sun is between 12 and 18 degrees below the horizon. Dusk is at the very end of astronomical twilight, and is the darkest moment of twilight just before night. Finally, night occurs when the sun reaches 18 degrees below the horizon and no longer illuminates the sky. Locations further north than the Arctic Circle and further south than the Antarctic Circle experience no full sunset or sunrise on at least one day of the year, when the polar day or the polar night persists continuously for 24 hours. At latitudes greater than within half a degree of either pole, the sun cannot rise or set on the same date on any day of the year, since the sun's angular elevation between solar noon and midnight is less than 1 degree. The time of sunset varies throughout the year and is determined by the viewer's position on Earth, specified by latitude and longitude, altitude, and time zone. Small daily changes and noticeable semi-annual changes in the timing of sunsets are driven by the axial tilt of the Earth, daily rotation of the Earth, the planet's movement in its annual elliptical orbit around the Sun, and the Earth and Moon's paired revolutions around each other. During winter and spring, the days get longer and sunsets occur later every day until the day of the latest sunset, which occurs after the summer solstice. In the Northern Hemisphere, the latest sunset occurs late in June or in early July, but not on the summer solstice of June 21. This date depends on the viewer's latitude, connected with the Earth's slower movement around the aphelion around July 4th. Likewise, the earliest sunset does not occur on the winter solstice, but rather about 2 weeks earlier, again depending on the viewer's latitude. In the Northern Hemisphere, it occurs in early December or late November, influenced by the Earth's faster movement near its perihelion, which occurs around January 3rd. Likewise, the same phenomenon exists in the Southern Hemisphere, but with the respective dates reversed, with the earliest sunsets occurring sometime before June 21st in winter, and the latest sunsets occurring sometime after December 21st in summer, again depending on one's southern latitude. For a few weeks surrounding both solstices, both sunrise and sunset get slightly later each day. Even on the equator, sunrise and sunset shift several minutes back and forth through the year, along with solar noon. These effects are plotted by an anal lemma. Neglecting atmospheric refraction and the sun's non-zero size, whenever and wherever sunset occurs, it is always in the northwest quadrant from the March equinox to the September equinox, and in the southwest quadrant from the September equinox to the March equinox. Sunsets occur almost exactly due west on the equinoxes for all viewers on Earth. Exact calculations of the azimuths of sunset on other dates are complex, but they can be estimated with reasonable accuracy by using the anal lemma. As sunrise and sunset are calculated from the leading and trailing edges of the sun, respectively, and not the center, the duration of a daytime is slightly longer than nighttime, by about 10 minutes, as seen from temperate latitudes. Further, because the light from the sun is refracted as it passes through the Earth's atmosphere, the sun is still visible after it is geometrically below the horizon. Refraction also affects the apparent shape of the sun when it is very close to the horizon. It makes things appear higher in the sky than they really are. Light from the bottom edge of the sun's disk is refracted more than light from the top, since refraction increases as the angle of elevation decreases. This raises the apparent position of the bottom edge more than the top, reducing the apparent height of the solar disk. Its width is unaltered, so the disk appears wider than it is high. In reality, the sun is almost exactly spherical. The sun also appears larger on the horizon, an optical illusion, similar to the moon illusion. Locations within the Arctic and Antarctic circles experience periods where the sun does not rise or set for 24 hours or more, known as polar day and polar night. These phenomena occur due to Earth's axial tilt, causing continuous sunlight or darkness at certain times of the year. Location on the horizon. Approximate locations of sunset on the horizon, azimuth, as described above can be found in refs. The figure on the right is calculated using the solar geometry routine as follows. For a given latitude and a given date, calculate the declination of the sun using longitude and solar noon time as inputs to the routine. Calculate the sunset hour angle using the sunset equation. Calculate the sunset time, which is the solar noon time plus the sunset hour angle in degree divided by 15. Use the sunset time as input to the solar geometry routine to get the solar azimuth angle at sunset. An interesting feature in the figure on the right is apparent hemispheric symmetry in regions where daily sunrise and sunset actually occur. This symmetry becomes clear if the hemispheric relation in sunrise equation is applied to the x and y components of the solar vector presented in ref. Solar geometry routines that model solar azimuth angles at sunset permit the calculation using latitude, date, and time parameters to be done precisely. Colors. As a ray of white sunlight travels through the atmosphere to an observer, some of the colors are scattered out of the beam by air molecules and airborne particles, changing the final color of the beam the viewer sees. Because the shorter wavelength components, such as blue and green, scatter more strongly, these colors are preferentially removed from the beam. At sunrise and sunset, when the path through the atmosphere is longer, the blue and green components are removed almost completely, leaving the longer wavelength orange and red hues we see at those times. The remaining reddened sunlight can then be scattered by cloud droplets and other relatively large particles to light up the horizon red and orange. The removal of the shorter wavelengths of light is due to Rayleigh scattering by air molecules and particles much smaller than the wavelength of visible light, less than 50 nanometers in diameter. The scattering by cloud droplets and other particles with diameters comparable to or larger than the sunlight's wavelengths, 600 nanometers, is due to Mie scattering and is not strongly wavelength dependent. Mie scattering is responsible for the light scattered by clouds, and also for the daytime halo of white light around the sun, forward scattering of white light. Sunset colors are typically more brilliant than sunrise colors, because the evening air contains more particles than morning air. Sometimes just before sunrise or after sunset a green flash can be seen. Ash from volcanic eruptions, trapped within the troposphere, tends to mute sunset and sunrise colors, while volcanic ejecta that is instead lofted into the stratosphere, as thin clouds of tiny sulfuric acid droplets, can yield beautiful post-sunset colors called afterglows and pre-sunrise glows. A number of eruptions, including those of Mount Pinatubo in 1991 and Krakatoa in 1883, have produced sufficiently high stratus clouds containing sulfuric acid to yield remarkable sunset afterglows, and pre-sunrise glows, around the world. The high-altitude clouds serve to reflect strongly reddened sunlight still striking the stratosphere after sunset, down to the surface. Some of the most varied colors at sunset can be found in the opposite or eastern sky after the sun has set during twilight. Depending on weather conditions and the types of clouds present, these colors have a wide spectrum, and can produce unusual results. Names of compass points. In some languages, points of the compass bear names etymologically derived from words for sunrise and sunset. The English words Orient and Occident, meaning east and west, respectively, are descended from Latin words meaning sunrise and sunset. The word levant, related e.g. to French, esse, lever meaning lift or rise, and also to English elevate, is also used to describe the east. In Polish, the word for east ushad, wschód, is derived from the morpheme ws, meaning up, and code, signifying move, from the verb chodzić, meaning walk, move, due to the act of the sun coming up from behind the horizon. The Polish word for west, zachod, is similar but with the word za at the start, meaning behind, from the act of the sun going behind the horizon. In Russian, the word for west, zapad, is derived from the words, meaning behind, and, signifying fall, from the verb, padot, due to the act of the sun falling behind the horizon. In Hebrew, the word for east is, which derives from the word for rising, and the word for west is, which derives from the word for setting. Historical view. The 16th century astronomer Nicolaus Copernicus was the first to present to the world a detailed and eventually widely accepted mathematical model supporting the premise that the Earth is moving and the Sun actually stays still, despite the impression from our point of view of a moving Sun. Planets. Sunsets on other planets appear different because of differences in the distance of the planet from the Sun and non-existent or differing atmospheric compositions. On Mars, the setting sun appears about 2/3 the size it does from Earth, due to the greater distance between Mars and the Sun. The colors are typically hues of blue, but some Martian sunsets last significantly longer and appear far redder than is typical on Earth. The colors of the Martian sunset differ from those on Earth. Mars has a thin atmosphere, lacking oxygen and nitrogen, so the light scattering is not dominated by a Rayleigh scattering process. Instead, the air is full of red dust, blown into the atmosphere by high winds, so its sky color is mainly determined by a Mie scattering process, resulting in more blue hues than an Earth sunset. One study also reported that Martian dust high in the atmosphere can reflect sunlight up to 2 hours after the sun has set, casting a diffuse glow across the surface of Mars. Cultural significance. Sunsets are an example of a natural phenomenon often considered beautiful by humans, and they are a common subject of visual artworks and in photography. In the Hebrew calendar, the Islamic calendar and the Baha'i calendar, the day starts at sunset. Thank you for watching this video.